kids. It's me, Mr. Jeshua. I came out here to the Arctic to record an intro to this video, and now I'm lost. I think there are some polar bears out there. I need help. Anybody, somebody, help. That's right. Today, we're going to the Arctic Circle, all the way to the North Pole. Grab your hat, a scarf, and some boots. We're off. Before you read, in 1909, Matthew Henson became the first man to reach the North Pole. He did this as a member of a team led by explorer Robert Peary. To get to the North Pole, the explorers traveled by ship, in sleds pulled by dogs, and on foot. Do you recognize the words in bold? Which word or words mean by walking? On foot. Which word means objects used to travel over ice and snow? Sleds. Which word means a group that works together? That's the word team. And which word means a person who belongs to a group? That's the word member. Now, as this is the B video, before we begin our reading, we're going to watch a video. This time, the video is about Native American tribes. Pay close attention. We'll do some activities and answer some questions after the video.
They were the first people in North America. We don't know when they arrived or the reason for their movement. But many scientists believe that 30,000 years ago, people from Asia walked or sailed along land that used to join Russia and North America. We don't have full knowledge of their history, but these people were the first Native Americans, or American Indians. The Native Americans moved across the land and changed their way of living in places with different conditions. They became hundreds of different groups with different languages and ways of living. In some places, the Indians lived by hunting buffalo. Near the Pacific Ocean, they caught fish instead and sailed in boats. They used the tall trees to build villages, boats, and traditional art called totem poles. When the first white people arrived in the 1500s, there was a healthy population of about 1 million Native Americans living north of Mexico. But things were different once the foreigners arrived. They brought European diseases which caused many deaths among the Indians. The settlers wanted to take the Indians' land. Some groups accepted the white people and others tried to fight, but in the end they lost their land. In the late 1800s, the United States government told the Indians to leave their homes and live on sites called reservations. Over the next 100 years, Native Americans continued to fight for a better life.
We were told that our religion was wrong.
Today, there are more than 550 recognized tribes or nations in the United States. Some have held meetings with the government to discuss returning their land. Native Americans are working towards better living conditions on the reservations. They also want to keep their languages, religions, and cultural identities. This ceremony is called a potlatch. In the past, the ceremony was stopped by the Canadian government. Now, the Kwakiutl Nation is performing it again. The Navajo Nation also mixes old and modern ways. This painting represents the Cloud People. The artist is making it to keep a group of people safe while they travel on a plane. Many Native American artists are bringing back traditional art forms and helping their culture to grow stronger in the future.
We'll place events on a timeline that looks like this. But it's different from a timeline because there are no dates. Here's the first event. Humans first come to North America. The second event. The first Europeans arrive in North America. Here's another. Many Native Americans die from new diseases. Traditional art forms and ceremonies begin again. The Native Americans become hundreds of different groups. And finally, the government makes Native Americans leave their land. These historical events are not listed in order from 1 to 6. They're all mixed up. So according to the video, which event comes first in the sequence of history? Well, that would be number 1. Humans first come to North America. Now in the second square, which event comes next? 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6? It's number 5. The Native Americans become hundreds of different groups. What number or event goes in the third cube? That would be number 4. Traditional art forms and ceremonies begin again. How about the fourth cube? That's number 2. The first Europeans arrive in North America. Unfortunately, this is bad news for the Native Americans, because next we have number 3. Many Native Americans die from new diseases. And finally, number 6. The government makes Native Americans leave their land. It's a very sad history. Let's do a completion activity. Take a look at this image. Now help me choose the right word. People think Native Americans came from Asia or Europe? What's the correct answer? People think Native Americans came from Asia. That's correct. Okay, number 2. This painting or this totem pole is an example of Native American art. This is a totem pole. Now it is painted, but it's not technically a painting. It's a totem pole. Each part of the pole represents a different animal, and each animal has a different significance or meaning for the tribe of Native Americans who built this totem pole. Let's look at number 3. Some tribes have held meetings with other tribes or the government to talk about getting their land back. Do you recall which is the correct answer? The answer is the government. And number 4. The patterns in this picture represent cloud people or Europeans. Which is it? The patterns represent cloud people. Time for today's main reading. Polar Pioneer. Let's preview today's language targets. African American, Inuit, snowshoes, dog sleds, and to learn a hard lesson. Let's begin by reading paragraph 1. Matthew Henson, Arctic explorer. Robert Peary and Matthew Henson both wanted to be great explorers. When Peary needed someone to join him on his trip to the North Pole, he thought of Henson. They had once worked together in Central America. At the time, it was unusual for an African American to be a well-known explorer. Henson wanted to change that, so, though he knew the trip would be hard, he agreed to go. We have 2 vocabulary words in this paragraph, join and well-known. We also have 1 language target, African American. To join means to connect or come together. There are lots of good reasons to join a group. Have you ever joined a group before? I'm sure you have. What kind of group was it? Let's check out our first language target, African American. This term refers to a Black American of African descent. The history of African Americans began in 1619, when 20 Africans were dropped in the English colony of Virginia. Kidnapped and forced into slavery, they worked as indentured servants. This was the beginning of slavery in America. Movements to end slavery began well over 200 years later, after the American Civil War. At that time, over 4 million African Americans were freed from slavery, gained their citizenship, and the right to vote. Let's practice. African American means a Black American of African descent. When did African American history begin? If something is well known, it is widely known, familiar, or famous. Can you name this well-known tower? I'll give you a hint. It's in France. Here's a picture of the same well-known tower from a different angle. Can you name it now? Paragraph 2. First, they traveled by ship to Greenland. The members of Peary's team lived among the Inuit people there. The Inuit called Henson Maripaluk, Matthew, the kind one. Henson learned their language. The Inuit taught him how to live outdoors on the ice, find food, build igloos, make snowshoes, and drive dog sleds through the snow and ice. We have 3 language targets in this paragraph and 1 vocabulary word. Let's check out the footnote. An igloo is a round house made of ice. Have you ever seen an igloo before? Inuit is the name of indigenous people of northern Canada, Greenland, and Alaska. Inuit people often live in cities of less than 100 people. They have a nice ocean view, but the ocean is frozen because the temperature where they live is around freezing for most of the year. Imagine making your way across thousands of miles of snow, ice, rock, and freezing oceans, only to settle down and make your home among snow, ice, rock, and freezing oceans. This describes the Inuit people. Keep in mind that Eskimo is a term used more loosely for the Inuit or other indigenous Alaskan people. So if you ever meet an Inuit person, you should check with them to see if it's okay before you call them an Eskimo, okay? Let's practice. Inuit are the indigenous people of northern Canada, Greenland, and Alaska. What do you know about the Inuit way of life? A snowshoe is a flat device used for walking on snow. Snowshoes are designed to help you keep the weight of your body on top of the snow without sinking in. There are many different types of snowshoe. Each one is designed for a different type of movement and a different type of snow. Most snowshoes share some common traits: a flat, broad frame, an upturned toe, and a long, pointed tail or heel. For Inuit people or anyone living in the frozen north, snowshoes are not just nice to have, they are vital. Let's practice. Snowshoes are a pair of flat devices used for walking on snow. Why do snowshoes have webbing? What do you think? Well, if a snowshoe had a flat board where the webbing would be, it would get very heavy. The webbing allows the snow to fall through, and that is good design. A dog sled is a low-frame vehicle pulled over ice and snow by dogs. Here you can see 2 men building a dog sled. That's interesting and cool. Dog sleds are cool and interesting. But you know what's even cooler? Sled dogs. Inuit sled dogs are a very special type of dog. The breed is over 1,000 years old. Without sled dogs, the Inuit people would not survive the harsh climate. And the only way to survive the cold weather of the frozen north is to eat plenty of fatty meat. The best way to get fatty meat is from fatty animals. These include walrus, seals, whale, fish, musk ox, and polar bear. That's right, polar bear. Sled dogs allow the Inuit people to travel and hunt. No dogs, no dog sled. No dog sled, no hunting. No hunting, no food. The Inuit sled dog and its counterpart, the dog sled, are vital for survival in the frozen north of the Arctic Circle. Take a moment and enjoy this beautiful footage of this dog sled being pulled by sled dogs. Let's practice. A dog sled is a low-frame vehicle pulled over ice and snow by dogs. Would you like to take a ride on a dog sled? Why or why not? To drive means to direct, steer, or control the movement of a vehicle. Have you ever driven a vehicle before? Paragraph 3. On top of the world. Between 1891 and 1906, the Peary-Henson team made 7 attempts to get to the North Pole. Each time, they learned hard lessons about the dangers there. Sleds broke. Dogs died. Men got hurt. They got close to the North Pole, but they always had to go back. This team of explorers learned more hard lessons, and we're going to talk about that in a moment. First, let's look at this word, attempts. An attempt is an effort or try to do something. How many attempts will you make before hitting the bullseye? To learn a hard lesson means to learn something through a bad experience. Can you imagine traveling all the way to the North Pole only to find out that there is no land there? That's a hard lesson. What we call the North Pole is really just an invisible spot that scientists agree is the northernmost place on Earth. But the location of the North Pole sits in the middle of an icy ocean that is sometimes completely frozen. Many hard lessons were learned on the multiple expeditions to the North Pole made by Matt Henson and Robert Peary. For example, Matt Henson was one of the best dog sled drivers in the world. He learned the Inuit language, took his sled up a 30-foot slope, and he lost a friend. Robert Peary had a big fancy dinner for himself in New York after the expedition, and Henson was not invited. In fact, Henson did not get credit for being the first person to reach the North Pole until almost 70 years after he did it. So Matt Henson learned some hard lessons. Robert Peary learned some hard lessons too. During one of his attempts to reach the North Pole, he lost 8 of his toes. I'm serious. By the time Peary finally reached the North Pole, he only had 2 of his toes left, and Henson had arrived first. Those are some hard lessons. Let's practice. To learn a hard lesson means to learn something through a bad experience. Have you ever learned a hard lesson? What was it? Paragraphs 4 and 5. In 1909, they decided to make one more attempt. Peary and Henson found themselves within 56 kilometers of the North Pole. Peary sent Henson ahead. He made a trail through the snow for Peary to follow. Peary followed 45 minutes later. "I think I am the first man to sit on top of the world," Henson told Peary. The team returned home as heroes. Both men's dreams had come true. They were the first explorers to reach the North Pole. We have 4 vocabulary words in these 2 paragraphs. Ahead means onwards, further towards the front. When have you gone ahead of someone else? Matt Henson went ahead of Robert Peary to the North Pole. That's why he reached the North Pole first. A trail is a line or path that leads somewhere. A trail in the woods is made by animals or people that move through it. Do you think the trail in the snow made by Matt Henson might have looked something like this? Maybe, but there are no trees in the Arctic Circle, so keep that in mind. To follow means to go or come after another. Can you think of animals besides birds that follow one another? And a hero is a champion or person of great courage. Matthew Henson is seen as a great hero to African Americans and to explorers. Nice work! You finished the reading. Time for today's discussion questions. Discussion question number 1. How would you feel about living or working in a cold, icy place like the Arctic Circle? I'll answer this question first. I think I might like to visit the Arctic Circle, but I would not want to live or work there. It's just too cold. Well, what's your answer? How would you feel about living or working in a cold, icy place like the Arctic Circle? What do you think you would like most about being there? And what would you like the least? Let's see, if I really had to live in the Arctic Circle, the thing I might like most about being there would be the big, beautiful country. Alaska, that part of Canada, and that part of Greenland are wide open, quiet, and very beautiful. I would enjoy that. And the thing I would like the least is probably the cold. Also, it's very expensive to live there. If you don't hunt, you have to buy your food. And buying food is extremely expensive. It costs $70 for a bag of dog food in the Arctic Circle. One pork chop costs $20. Well, what about you? What would you like the most and the least about living or working in the Arctic Circle? Discussion question number 2. Why do scientists study the polar regions? And what do they learn from their studies? Some scientists go to the polar regions to study natural resources such as oil. This is a big topic, and not everyone agrees that this is the right thing to do. What are some other reasons scientists have for studying the polar regions? And what do you think they learned from their studies? What challenges do people face when working or living in the polar regions? I'll let you answer this question. Let's check out the critical thinking questions. Why do you think being an African American explorer in the 1900s was difficult? If you're not sure, go back and watch the section of the video where we discuss the language target African American. You'll find lots of hints and clues there. Then come back and answer this question. At this time in history, African Americans were still considered newly freed slaves. They did technically have some rights such as citizenship and voting rights, but these rights were overlooked and were not honored in most American states until around the 1960s. So for Matthew Henson to do what he did when he did it was very difficult. What traits or qualities did Henson have that made him a great explorer? If you're not sure, answer this question first. Why do you think Robert Peary wanted to hire Matthew Henson? How did Matt Henson prove that he was a capable explorer when, for example, he got to know the Inuit people? Well, Matthew Henson was dedicated and brave. He was also very smart. He was able to learn the Inuit language, which is something that Robert Peary himself was not able to do. He also became a master at driving sled dogs, something else that's very difficult. So you can see that Mad Henson had a lot of special qualities that helped to make him a great explorer. Time for today's reading skill. Today's reading skill is understanding compound words. A compound word is created by putting two words together. It can be formed from different parts of speech, such as a noun and a noun, as in back plus pack. Put these words together and they make the word backpack. Back and pack are both nouns. It can be formed by an adjective in a noun, as in blue plus berry. Blue is an adjective, berry is a noun. Put these two words together and you have the compound word blueberry. You can also make compound nouns a third way, with a preposition and a noun. For example, after plus noon. After is a preposition, noon is a noun. Put these words together and you get the word afternoon. Pretty cool, huh? Let's do some practice. Noticing. Look back at the second paragraph of the passage. That's paragraph 2. Find and write 4 compound words in the paragraph. Let's look at the paragraph first. First, they traveled by ship to Greenland. The members of Peary's team lived among the Inuit people there. The Inuit called Henson Maripaluk Matthew, the kind one. Henson learned their language. The Inuit taught him how to live outdoors on the ice, find food, build igloos, make snowshoes, and drive dog sleds through the snow and ice. Did you find any compound words in this paragraph? What's the first one? The first compound word is the word Greenland. To make this compound word, we put the word green and land together. What's the next compound word in this paragraph? Outdoors. Put the word out and the word doors together. You got it. Outdoors. What's the third compound word? Snowshoes. Put the word snow together with the word shoes. No spaces in a compound word. And you got snowshoes. What is the fourth compound word? Dog sleds. Time for today's homework assignment. For today's homework assignment, you will complete a beautiful compound words worksheet. Look at the compound words at the top of the page. Break the words up into their 2 separate individual words. If you're not sure what these compound words mean, use a dictionary to check the definition before you complete the sentences 1 through 10. You're going to have a lot of fun with this worksheet. I just know it. Thanks for joining me today on a trip into the Arctic Circle. I hope you had fun, and I hope you stayed warm. Stick around. The retelling and writing video is coming up next.